All right, so we've got another legend on today. We've got Luke. Luke has been a client for a couple of months now. He's been absolutely crushing it. Firstly, I want to say, Luke, appreciate you coming on today.
Of course, brother. It's a pleasure to be here, and I was looking to do this interview for a little bit now.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time coming. And I thought for this one, we could just start with an introduction about you and your agency. Do you mind just giving a quick overview about your agency, who it helps, all of that?
Totally. So, I run a company called Vanta. What we do is we're a B2B appointment setting agency. So we set up cold email systems for our clients, book them appointments so they can close more clients. We primarily work with marketing agencies, but maybe looking to expand that here soon.
Sounds great. And I thought for this one, we could just start at the beginning when we first met. I remember our
Totally.
sales call, probably one of my favorite calls, one of the quickest calls too. But at the time that we spoke, I remember it was on a Saturday specifically.
Yeah.
What was the situation like with the agency?
Yeah, totally. So, I to give you some context, I have been running the agency for about a year now, and that was around 2 months ago when we had first spoken. Two months
Hmm.
ago or so at this point. And at that point, we were kind of stuck around I was able to scale it to the 10K, 11K a month mark, but I was really just stuck there for the past. Consistently around 4 months before we had spoken. And it wasn't really budging. Obviously, we were looking to grow. That was the biggest thing that we were trying to do. But I mean, before watching your stuff, I had really paid zero attention to operations and systems and team and all that. And I figured I could just brute force my way to where I wanted to go, but I was quickly realizing that that wasn't the case. So yeah, I mean, we had no systems in place, no teams, no operations. That's when I came across your videos, and obviously that the messaging of operations that you put out really resonated with where I was at, because it was really pretty much just me doing everything, and obviously I hit a cool goal, but had no way to scale it past that really.
100%. Um, and you made such a fantastic point. Couple of good points there too. Like you were doing everything yourself. I remember this from the call specifically. And at the time, because a lot of people are in this position, they're doing everything themselves. They started the agency for money, for freedom, all of that. At the time that we're having the call, what were your goals with the agency? Where were you looking to get to?
Yeah, totally. In terms of like the short-term goals, I knew I had wanted to scale it to at least 50 to 70K a month. That was a big point of where I want to take it by then. But at that point, it was just like removing myself from the day to day to some extent, because obviously you
Mm.
get into it, looking to not working 9 to 5, whatever it may be for everyone else, right? Um, but you realize that you quickly just like create another, a job inside of it, and you're stuck inside, and it's not a fun place to be for sure once you know that you've kind of created a system that's fully dependent on you, and it slowly runs without you. And if you take days off, the business doesn't do anything. So
Yeah,
that was in terms of where I want to take it. It was, in terms of the shortest term goals, where when we had first spoke, it was more or less, getting some sort of system in place to say we're like, hey, if I want to do, go take a day or two off on a weekend, I could do that without having to, suffer the results. So that was one of the biggest kind of short term goal for me for sure.
100%. And I remember on our call specifically, you had almost more clarity than anyone else on exactly what they needed. You're like,
Mm.
look, my goal is to get here. I need this and this. I need the systems. I need the ops. Like, let's just do it. Um, I wanted to check, slightly unrelated, but a lot of people they're okay with the job. Like for example, they
Yeah,
may get to
absolutely.
10K, they may even have like a normal 9 to 5, and they're fine with that.
Totally.
They're just making their
Totally.
money, working all day. What actually
Totally.
made you want to push beyond the number that most people aim for, like that 10K?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think I think it's, a lot of it just comes down to, obviously will in a lot of way. And one thing I've always found about myself is if I'm not doing something that's consistently hard, I tend to get a little bit bored, and I hate being stagnant. That's one of the worst things I figure. I mean, you always hear the corny saying, "You're either growing or you're dying," but I think it's really true. And the factor, like, if you're not pushing for anything, obviously it's easy to stay stable, at whatever you may want it to be. But um, I find in the times of life where I'm pursuing something and actively trying to push is when I'm the most happiest. So I just try to do that the most often that I can, whether it's pushing, business wise or personal goals. Um, Always trying to push in that way is what's really made me happiness. So I try to recreate that in
Yeah.
many areas as I can, because I find if I'm too stagnant, I'm not too happy with myself.
100%. 100%. And that leads on to the next thing I want to talk about, which is when you first joined, I guess, what were the first things that we focused on to actually help you move in that direction?
Totally. Yeah. I can remember the first exercise. It was the, forgetting the name of it, the decentralization exercise. I'm pretty sure was
Yeah.
what you guys named it, but,
Yeah.
it was a great exercise. I mean, it's an exercise that I created then, and I think will serve me well because I can recreate it anytime, really, where it essentially outlines a very clear picture of where your energy is attached to and how to remove yourself directly from that, node of, contact. So
Mm.
I remember that being the first exercise that we really went through, which is obviously on the operation side, which is like, getting to, your first, big months is like woo woo. Like no one talks about operations, right? It's just like sign more clients, get clients results. But it's really what's needed because, I would have never ever in my time taken, an hour or two out of my day, previously to do anything like that. But again, it's, those paradigm shifts that lead to some of the biggest changes. So it's, I remember that being the first exercise and being like, wow, it gave me a lot of clarity
Yeah.
in the fact of like, I know exactly where I need to go from here, which is obviously the main point of this all.
Yeah. And by all means, like the exercise is super useful. I think James was saying this on the last interview as well, that decentralization one, but props to you for actually taking action on it. Because I remember
Yeah.
specifically with you, you got the exercise and the next day it was done. And the next day after that, you had the craziest Miro board that anyone's ever seen, which was fantastic. So I wanted to check after you did that. I remember people messaging me after the call. They were like, where can I find that? I'm like, no, Luke made that. What were the actual effects, the downstream effects of doing this decentralization exercise where you got that clarity?
Yeah. And in terms of what I realized I needed to do is I realized I had so much information in my own head, which is exactly what you say in your modules. And all you had to do is put it out onto SOPs and operations in place and essentially transfer obviously what you know in here to anyone else. And it was like one of the biggest shifts, like, wow, I don't need to be doing 90% of the button clicking that I'm actually doing. I can just make, a video, an SOP one time and give that to someone and say, hey, you just click these buttons and we'll be good. So it was actually one of the biggest shifts that I had. And like, obviously up to that point, it was like, I was so brute force to sign more clients, get clients better results and get to, whatever it was, 10, 11K a month. But up to that point, it was one of the biggest shifts where I could be like, hey, I can create this piece of content one time, hand it off to someone and they can do this all for me. And then I can focus on the things that actually grow the business. So, in terms of that, like that module absolutely was, worth the price of admission. The one operations module was, I mean, it's changed my business in 2 months and it will absolutely continue to change it. And, it'll serve as lifelong principles. Like those exercises that we've done, like when coming up, when we hit 50K or 100K a month, like I 100% go back to those exercises and just redo them. Cause I mean, they're that valuable. They're that valuable 100% because, it can see where you're bottlenecking yourself, which I think is as young kids kind of getting into this game, like I think it's easy to do is to bottleneck your own way and not realize where the constraint is. And these exercises really easily allow you to understand, where you're going wrong. Maybe not where you're going wrong, but where the real constraint is.
Yeah. And I think for people like us, specifically once you get into entrepreneurship, we think like our first response is like, okay, wake up an hour earlier, just work a bit more,
Yeah.
as opposed to actually building these systems, which you did extremely well. And like I was saying before the call started, you actually inspired so many other people to get the operations manager. Like I would tell people all the time, and many of them got it. But until they saw the speed at which you did it, and you were like, oh yeah, this is game changing. Like they were like, okay, let me get on that very soon.
Yeah.
So I want to check. That's obviously one of the big things we talk about, the ops manager. I guess what was your experience like in getting them, and then the short-term effects? Because it's been pretty recent of having them.
Totally. So as mentioned, I've only been working on the program for about 2 months now. It's still pretty recent, but the first month was building all, your SOP hub. So everything in terms of onboarding, delivery. I mean, it's so crystal clear. And when you say like, hey, there's only a finite amount of tasks you actually do in the business, you just have to get them out of your head. So the first month was really getting every system out of my head that I was doing in terms of writing down literally every task I would do for every client, bringing them on stages to getting them onboarded and closed to getting them results, right? So the first month was that. it was literally getting SOPs built out for every single one of those tasks. Now within the last month, or 3 weeks, I should say, we've been able to bring on a operations manager who's been able to handle all those tasks, right? And because of obviously your system and the way you teach it, I really don't have to do that much training, right? All the content, the SOPs that we create is the training, and simply I just have a check and call with them, once, twice a week, make sure everything's good. And I mean, they're pretty, full up to KPI where we need them to be within 2 to 3 weeks of hiring, which is pretty awesome. And obviously the effect of that, back to your main question, is like, it's crazy. The only thing I have to do now is take sales calls, close clients, and make sure we're getting our clients the best campaigns, best results with, auditing campaigns and stuff like that. So like 90% of the button clicking I was doing, which would say, maybe take up 2 to 4 hours, depending on the day, right? Depending on how many clients we were onboarding, etc., is all removed. I don't have to do any of it, right? So the funny thing is we were scaling, but our clients were getting worse results simply because I didn't have the bandwidth to then do all the button clicking on top of doing all the auditing, the campaigns that we needed to do, right? And when we get down the next line, obviously the next hire is now getting someone who can do the button clicking on the campaign, who has that knowledge of, hey, when this is happening in the campaign, this is what you need to do to audit it. So, I mean, that's the next step from here. And then from there, obviously, we can only take on sales calls, content. And then from there, it's hiring a salesperson. So, I mean, it's just the process that you lay out is like, it's so simple, but no one thinks of it. It's crazy. It's 100% changed my business. And in 2 months, I mean, we've seen crazy growth from it. So, I mean, it's just speak on your main question, the operations manager, it's been nothing short of fantastic. It's a life changer already in 2 weeks.
I really do appreciate it, man. And I think the key point for people to take away is that, because you're obviously a very smart guy, working very hard. And I saw your results before you came on with us. Like, you were getting results, but like, why weren't you scaling? And the thing was, like, it wasn't that you even needed new information or to work harder. You just needed to get the information out of your head somewhere else so that someone else can follow it. And as soon as that happened, it's like, it's like
I needed the information on how. I needed the information on how to get the information out of my head. That was what I was missing, and that's luckily what you guys teach.
100%. Like, but then it's like, once you have that, then there's no real limit, to be honest.
No, absolutely. And that's what it showed me. Like, I used to feel so confined with all that, and now it's just like I realize that, like, for every step in this, like, like you said, there is no limit. You just have to keep repeating, rinse and repeating, getting the information that you're doing, getting someone who's qualified to fill that role, and like you said, like it's just made things so much simpler, and the clearer, much more, like you said, the vision much more clear.
Like, I think people are going to watch this, they're going to be like, yeah, it sounds so simple, but there's probably something more complicated than that. But it's like, it really just is communicating.
It's work, but it's much more simple than, and I think vastly a lot of people try to overcomplicate it, and I've really enjoyed how you guys have kept it simple. It's just find what's in your head, get out on SOPs, into tutorials, have someone do it for you, on to the next. It's really that simple.
100%. Yeah. So then, obviously, just in terms of timelines, so you started implementing this, took a ton of action, saw some great results with it. And then I remember on one of the calls, we focused on the next thing, which was acquisition, and specifically was raising your prices. Is that right?
Totally. Yeah, more so. I guess you could say that, but changing the structure a little bit too. So, I mean, previously we were working on a paper show model and not a retainer. What we've done now is switched to a retainer and gone rid of the paper show, which, I mean, is huge because, I mean, our job as a lead generation agency is to obviously book our clients good calls, right? But obviously there's inevitably a lot of distance between where we would get paid and simply just like luck. Like, for example, like the calendar invite may have not sent out and that prospect doesn't show on our client's call and we don't get paid, right? So there's a lot of gap in between of our job and where we actually got paid, which obviously is like it's not conducive obviously to a growing business. So I mean, that change in and of itself too has been massive in terms of actually increasing profits and revenue overall.
That's perfect, man. That's perfect. And I wanted to ask, because we talk about like documenting and all of this quite often. Obviously, you're making great changes with the acquisition, but that wasn't really the problem at the start. Yeah, we helped you, move to retainer, things like that, but you knew how to sell, you knew how to market, all of that. For the people who have the objection where it's like, yeah, I'll get to making SOPs and like delegating, but I'm too busy right now. Like, I just don't have time. What would you say to people in those positions?
You're never going to have time. If you keep putting it
Yeah.
off, right? If you're looking to scale, right, you're only going to make yourself more busy. If your goal is to scale, you're only going to get more busy with more clients, right? And so if you don't build the SOPs out, I mean, you're simply never going to have time. And you're even going to get to a worse spot where you're so bottlenecked down and you realize you have to do it that it's like,
Yeah.
it's even worse than it is now. And I mean, I get to that. I mean, I get that objection for sure. Cause I was one of those people. I was like, no, I'll put it off. I'll build SOPs when I need to. And then when I needed to, I was like, it was a train wreck just because like I had to do everything on top of building all the SOPs, which was like, it was a crazy month, but like we had to get it done. And obviously like you can hear us talking about it, like, hey, build out the SOPs now when you have some time, but like you may or may not listen. I didn't listen. It'll bite you in the ass. It'll call for some long days, but it's worth it to get it done now for sure.
Yeah, long days and extra coffee, but it's worth it,
Yeah.
man. It's worth it.
Yeah.
100%, man, 100%. And I want to ask you because, like, people are watching this, and specifically the guys in the program, they look up to you, look at the progress you've made in a very quick amount of time. Plus, the people on things like YouTube, all of that. Do you have any advice for specifically people who are in your position where they had success already? They may be making 3K, 5K, they've got a couple clients, but they're doing everything themselves and they want to get to where you are, or just at least scaling to like 10, 15, 20K. Do you have any advice for agency owners in that situation?
Yeah. I think one thing that I kept on telling myself, like right when I'm doing this program, is like the only three things I need to be focusing on are closing clients, booking calls for clients, and building systems, like obviously after I've joined. So like I think a lot of people get bogged down into like they need to be doing so much more, but like I put it down to like what's gonna make me money. Close clients, book clients calls, and then how am I gonna get out of day to day, build systems. And those are the only three things I focus on. So like I think we all watch Ramosa here and take inspiration from him, but like it was just like ruthlessly cut out everything that isn't those things. Right. And so like I just focus on those three things and like lo and behold it works. So I think it's just defining, what systems in your business make you money, ruthlessly cutting out everything else. And then obviously if you're at that point where you're doing everything yourself, taking the steps in this program like this to say, hey, how do I get myself out of the day and get this off my plate so I can then focus again, all my focus on the little things that'll make me money. I think people just get too bogged down in stuff that actually doesn't move the business forward, to be honest.
Yeah. And I agree with you completely, like 100%. What are some of the examples of these small things that actually either don't matter or things that just need to be given off to someone else quicker? Because I feel like a lot of these agency owners, they're working all day on small things that don't actually move the needle. What are some of these things that you probably got rid of as well?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I can, like you said, I can just tell you what I've gotten rid of for myself. It's like, I guess, super specific to our agency, but like building lists, like anything that categorize anything in that category is anything that is just clicking buttons, right? So as you say, really a quote from your program is you hire people and you pay people to do what I forget what it is, but it's to do the actions that not to think on your behalf, right?
Yeah.
So it's essentially to button click and not think of anything new, but to just simply do what you already know how to do. So for me, that was building lists, that was client reporting, that was communicating with clients, that was things that I could easily pass off and was taking up a ton of my time and, not allowing me to focus on the most important things again. Taking more sales calls, building better campaigns for clients. So Zoom's giving me some balloons here, but and those are the main things for me. But I mean, I think a lot of people, especially in the beginning, like I would get so bogged down in like the design of my website or this tweak on my VSL, refilling my VSL, stuff like this is like just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Just close more clients and get clients better results.
Simple, man.
Yeah.
Look, generally, like it's been great having you on today. I'm sure people want to learn more about you. Where can people find you?
Absolutely. I'm going to be starting content soon. Well, I'll be on YouTube. I'll be on YouTube specifically, but you can just find us at avanteagency.com is our main site for sure.
Cool. If by the time you have the YouTube up and this is live, we'll just get it adjusted and get that YouTube link in there.
Appreciate it.
Last thing I wanted to check is, what are your next goals?
Yeah. So obviously in terms of that, like you said, to give you some numbers on before this call. So I mean, we were stuck around 2 months ago around that 10K mark. This last month we did 22. 22K in this month, which is like, double in 2 months, is, amazing, right? So I think like the next viable step from here is to get to the goal 50 first. I think that's, super, super doable. And I think just the logical next step in terms of like, hey, what do we need to do from here is simply just sign more clients, get clients better results, put in 1 or 2 more unique hires, and we'll be there. And then from there, like you said, I really think along the path that you did, it's figuring like, hey, do I want to take it with this model, or do I want to scale to something, a little less operation complex and go to another model? So I think 50 will be kind of the next inflection point of like, do I want to keep going down this path, or do I want to take a little bit of a different model and a different approach? So I think that's definitely in terms of like next 6-12 months where we're looking to be at for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Like you will get to 50. It's really just a matter of doing more of what you're already doing.
Yeah.
And most of the people, they just get capped, not because they don't know how to sign clients, but because they just can't hit past it on the operational side. The more they scale up, the more they work. So with you not having those constraints, it's just a matter of time until you hit 50, to be honest.
Totally, yeah. Time, like you said, time, closing more clients, putting a couple more hires in, and we'll be there. I know it's a sealed deal. It's a matter of when, if not now.
Looking forward to it, man. Either way, it was great speaking as always, brother. Great having you on. And
you as well.
talk
Thank
to you
you,
when you hit the 50.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.